you who just tuned in, thank you so much for joining and welcome to this Sentry workshop on how Calixa protects developers' time with a custom integration. I'm really excited to introduce this workshop since this is actually going to be the first installment of a new Sentry integration workshop series, which aims to highlight the stories of companies who have built tools that help extend Sentry's code observability capabilities. So in this episode, I'm super excited to have Thomas join us here from Calixa to share how his company built a custom integration to bring Sentry data into Calixa and improve efficiency amongst teams. All right, so going through the agenda for today, we're going to kick off with introductions. Then we'll walk through how developers can build on Sentry, as well as announce a few of our latest ecosystem features. Then Thomas will go into what, why, and how Calixa built their Sentry integration. We'll then walk through the integration publishing process for those of you who are interested in building your own. And then we'll reserve some time at the end to go through questions. And then a couple housekeeping items. If you do have questions that you would like to ask during the workshop, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A function in the Zoom webinar. That is going to be different from the chat function. So try to find that little Q&A carrot if you can. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can during this workshop. We love to see the engagement from folks during our workshop. So please ask your questions and we'll try to get to them during the Q&A. There's also a poll question located in this Zoom webinar. So it's just a quick multiple choice on why you decided to tune in today. If you can answer that as well, that'll help us and greatly appreciated for that. Also, this workshop will be recorded and we'll share this out with everyone through email afterwards. So if you have any friends who couldn't make it, or if you want to reference this workshop at a later point, you'll be able to view the recording that will be attached to the follow-up email. And then finally, there will be a survey that will pop up at the end of this workshop. It should take only a couple seconds. So if you could just answer the few questions about your experience today, that would be greatly appreciated as it helps us make sure we are delivering valuable content for you all. Awesome. So to dive into introductions, we have three speakers today. We have Thomas Schiavone, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, co-founder and CEO of Calixa, who will be sharing his story with us. And then on the Sentry side, I'm excited to introduce Gautham Chundi, who is a director of products here at Sentry, and Nisanthan Nanthakumar, who is a software engineer on the ecosystem team here at Sentry. And Gautham and Nisanthan will share how to build on Sentry and go through your questions. So without further ado, Gautham, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Angela. So first of all, for all attendees, thank you for making the time. It is an honor and a privilege. I see that it's different time zones and from different parts of the world. So thanks once again for making the time and really glad to host you. So today, I wanted to talk to you about how you could build on Sentry. So stepping back, Sentry is all about being for the developer and it's for every developer. So what that translates to in practice is that we strive to make sure that developers have the ability to consume Sentry in a context that is most relevant to them. So we are trying to meet developers where they are. And today, developers can build on Sentry in one of two ways. They could create their own integrations and publish this to Sentry using the integration platform. And Thomas will be speaking more about how Calixa did exactly that. Or they could consume Sentry APIs. So we have a rich set of APIs that is ever growing. And this allows developers to consume Sentry functionality in their own context. So the integration platform itself, it allows developers to build and publish integrations. We also have a sample application that we launched recently. We'll be speaking more about that. About the APIs, we have our documentation and a rich set of functionality, and you could do interesting things with that in the context that's most relevant to you. So to speak about the integration platform, I'll hand it off to Nisanthan, who's part of the ecosystem team. Nisanthan was actually involved in developing the integration platform.
Thanks, Gautham. So a little bit more context on the integration platform. So we allow you to create internal and public integrations. Internal integrations are scoped to your organization, and public integrations allow other organizations in Sentry to install your integration. And there are three parts that make up the integration platform. So the first is the API, which is the publicly documented CRUD endpoints. Second is the webhook events. And third are UI components. So we allow you to create a JSON-based schema that defines components that we can render within specific parts in Sentry. So for example, we just created this alert rule action UI component, and this renders within our issue alert and metric alert rule feature, and will allow users to select your integration as an action for those rules that a user creates. Another update that we've made is creating this comment webhook. So a potential feature is syncing comments. And we've also created this sample application. The QR code points to the GitHub repo, and it is essentially a Kanban app that we built that demonstrates the capabilities of the integration platform. It provides an example of how the authentication works and how to validate webhooks. Feel free to fork and create your own integration. Upcoming in the next quarter, we're adding some debugging tools for integrations. We're trying our best to provide a good developer experience and the best user experience for our mutual customers. And there's more coming soon. Thank you.
So with that, we'll pass it on to Thomas. So Thomas, you could speak about the Calixa integration. So Calixa used the integration platform, and I think Thomas will be spending some time speaking about sharing more context on Calixa and how they leverage the integration platform.
Indeed. Let me just share my screen. So who the heck am I? I'm Thomas, co-founder and CEO of Calixa. Let me just give you a quick story of why I built Calixa. So I was the first PM at Twilio, another great developer company like Sentry. And what I noticed is we had all these developers signing up, but like, which ones do we talk to? And then sales or support were asking for, hey, I need data about these customers. I need to figure out how they're using us and what errors and issues they're running into. So what we ended up doing was we built a platform that plugged all this data together, helped sales prioritize and understand customers, but we had to spend a bunch of engineering resources to build it. So I said, hey, maybe there's something better. Maybe there should be a product that just does this without having to ask developers inside a company to build it. So that's why we built Calixa. It's really to solve this pain that I felt at Twilio and actually at a bunch of other companies that I've been at. And I'm sure Sentry has this too. You just have a bunch of people signing up for your product. They don't necessarily have to talk to sales. And that's like one of the wonderful things about modern software, especially modern developer software, is you can just sign up and start using it. So how do you empower the customer teams to really stay on top of customers? That's where Calixa comes in, helps you to find the right customers to talk to, helps you to take action on them and help them grow and be successful. That sounds nice in theory. How do you do it? Well, when you have a bunch of signups, a bunch of developers using your product, which ones you're talking to? They all kind of look the same. And so the only way to really do that is to give them context. And what context is what users are up to, both the good and the bad. And so why context is important, you can think about it is, hey, who's new and growing and using your product, who's already existing on your product and increasing usage, or who's hit some sort of issue, right? And I think all these are really interesting different phases, but the only way that a sales team can be effective is if they have the data. And so what Calixa does is unifies all that data without requiring your engineering team to pull all that data together and make sense of it. Now, the unique piece of data that we're talking about today is product errors. And I think product errors are a really interesting source of data for sales, because it really can help you understand who's having challenges with your product and needs help. And so the other thing, I don't know your company, but sometimes you roll out code and something goes wrong, you can immediately sort of spot an impact for customers. And the cool thing is the customer team can be on top of it without having to ask the engineering team. And actually with Calixa, you can help them coordinate across. So let's talk a little bit more about the before state of having Sentry in our product and the after state. So in the before state, I'd say that the customer teams were flying blind, right? We actually saw this at our own company. That's why we actually built Calixa without Sentry to begin with. And then we said, hey, we have all these issues. Hey, we need to sort of integrate the issues that we're seeing into the product, because what was happening was we were being reactive to customer issues, not proactive. And what does that mean? People were writing into us and telling us about issues they were having. I think from a customer standpoint, it's a lot better if I, as a sort of a customer facing person, can talk to the customers without having to be, one, alerted by them, but two, without having to poke my engineers like, hey, what's going on? Hey, is there issues or not issues? So we said, hey, let's pull that all together. And that's one of the real reasons why we decided to build the integration. But the real thing that sort of irked me the whole time is like, it's great kind of that people are writing in and asking about issues, but who's having issues and not reaching out and sort of stopping to use your product as a result. So once we launched our Sentry integration, we let you do a bunch of cool things. One, more importantly, we could alert people internally for when key accounts were having error spikes. So again, this gives you that ability to, in real time, as somebody is experiencing an issue, reach out to them. And this could be the customer-facing team reaching out, sort of managing the situation, and then coordinating with their engineering counterpart, right? And that's a really critical thing for sales teams. The other cool thing is when you're sort of debugging issues and things that customers writing in, you can actually, we actually have it so that the Sentry issues are there and you can see them in context with everything else. So no longer do people have to be like, well, I can't figure out why this person's writing in about some issue, and then saying, hey, Thomas in engineering, help me out. I can't figure out what's going on. We actually pull that full context in, and so they can actually see the issues that the person's encountering. It's no longer a mystery, and now there's really effective, smooth coordination and collaboration between sales and engineering. Now, there's maybe one more question you're going to ask me, like, so okay, it makes sense why you built the integration to product errors. Why Sentry? I think it came about for a few key reasons. One, we were actually already a customer and our team loves it, right? So that made it like a really natural thing to explore. I think thing two is, as a company, we get to talk to a lot of other companies. And it was clear that, 9 times out of 10, the errors system we were hearing about was Sentry. So that made it a very clear choice. And lastly, and most importantly, we actually had an API that I could actually, I first could actually look at the API and figure out, hey, can we do something here? Two, then I could hand it over to an engineering team to prototype. And actually, we first built one of those internal apps. And then later, we sort of graduated into having a sort of an external app that somebody else could install on their behalf. So cool. That's a little bit about us, why we chose Sentry, why Sentry is awesome. Now let's quickly go into a demo. I'm going to show you how that Sentry error data is integrated into our product and give you a little bit more context as to what even the hell Calixa is. So let's actually go into a real live product. So here we are in Calixa, and you can see in Calixa, you have this ability to see all your users, basically the individuals that sign up for your product. And thing two, accounts. So individuals work for a company is represented in here. So you want to see collections of users, and that's where we have accounts. And the powerful thing about Calixa is we pull data together from all the different products you use. So you see Salesforce, Zendesk, yada, yada, yada. And also your own data warehouse, which is like actually a super key thing these days. But in this case, you can see I'm looking at a list of my top accounts. Let's pretend that I'm an account executive, and I can see both, what their revenue is that they generated yesterday, as well as their errors. And so I want to be like, hey, oh shucks, wait, this company is, the revenue is surging, but they have these 8 errors. Hey, I want to go investigate as what's going on. So I can dig in and pull some more information about them. And in here in context, I can actually see everything that's going on with their account, but I can also see like, oh shoot, here are these Sentry errors that that are going on. Okay, I think I might, this is a growing and surging account. I might want to dig in more here. So I can dig into the account here. I can again see their errors over time. And so what we're doing here was we're sort of giving a more simplified view for the customer teams, so they have insight into their Sentry errors, so that they don't have to log into Sentry, right? But they have it right here, and it gives them a way to sort of coordinate and collaborate with their engineering counterpart. You can also see a full timeline here is everything that's going on across all the products, as well as the messages, emails back and forth, as well as the specific Sentry errors. So this gives some place for people to, for salespeople to easily prioritize who to talk to, and sort of dig down deep and sort of investigate an issue. And that's one of the core aspects of Calixa. I'm going to show you some other key pieces, but this is the core thing of pulling data together and giving everyone sort of this 360 context on customers. So let me pop back into my slides, and I'll sort of walk you through very quickly what I just talked about. Cool. So what I just talked to you about was, I'd say, the 3 key things that I think Calixa can do for you with Sentry. One, so it's customer prioritization. So which of my accounts are having issues, basically. And so by getting this information from Sentry into Calixa, the sales team can be empowered to figure out who to reach out to, understand why they're reaching out to, and effectively coordinate with their engineering counterparts. I think thing 2 is actually maybe the most exciting thing for the sales team, is this ability to get real-time alerts as to what's happening with their customer base. So we can alert you about like the good things that are happening, increasing usage, increasing revenue, all that good stuff. But you also want to know about the not good stuff, the errors. And so here we have this ability to set up automated customer notifications via Slack or email, or actually webhook. And here's how you can see how it's set up in Calixa. And a key thing here is how we're handling this is, because we get the errors in real time from Sentry, we can actually then be counting how many occur over a given time period. And then when it hit, you can set a certain threshold with Calixa. When it exceeds that threshold, then we notify on your behalf to you internally. So this is pretty powerful. And then sort of the last way is sort of this account troubleshooting that I showed you, where we give you this 360 customer context. We graph it in the console, but I think more importantly is where you can actually go into that timeline and see the actual issue. And one of the cool thing here is we've have it actually linked between our product and Sentry, so that you can actually click and view this link, view this error in Sentry. So this would be something that a salesperson could hand off to their edge counterpart and say, hey, it's important, customers having these issues. Here are the exact issues that I'm seeing within Calixa. Hey, can you help me out? And so it just makes it a lot easier for people to coordinate and make sure they're talking about the same thing. Cool. Now I'm going to go into a bit about how we built this. And before I do that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sort of Calixa's architecture. So as you saw in the product, one of the core parts of Calixa is pulling all that data together into one place, right? And so a key part of our sort of our architecture is we rely on API connections out to many different software vendors or software apps, as well as collecting webhooks from them. So a core part of our architecture is these connections to these third-party apps, and we've gotten quite good at it. And what ends up happening is either we're pulling and asking for data from one of them, or being pushed to us via webhook. Either way, it's getting into us. And then once it's in us, we're processing it as it comes in. And so we're doing things like, we actually generate metrics off of it. We actually look at the specific events, because you actually trigger things off specific events that come in. And then we're putting it into our data store. We use a couple of different data stores for different parts of the product so that you can later query and slice and dice and segment segmented in the console. The data stores serve the console, and the console sort of is a thin layer that goes and reads into our internal APIs. So this gives you sort of a high level understanding of what Calixa is about. It's really about pulling together data from a bunch of third-party applications and making sense of it. And sort of the real magic is connecting it and unifying it for the customer. So when we look at this diagram, we get to sort of some of the core requirements that we needed to build our Sentry application. So thing one, we wanted sort of real-time access to data, because we didn't want to be like, oh yeah, we can give you errors, but it's 24 hours old and you can only pull once a day, or whatever limits they put on you. That's not helpful. You can't, in that case, you can't, for our product, that would not allowed us to enable our teams to be proactive instead of reactive, right? The other thing is, how do we make it damn simple to connect our application to Sentry? And that's a critical thing. So your application is only as good as it can be installed. So that was chief in mind. Can people in a few clicks connect the two accounts? So let's go through what we discovered when working with Sentry. So first, awesome. We could get the data real time. So we use Sentry's webhooks that whenever an error happened, they fire a webhook to us to a designated URL, and then we catch that, we throw it on a queue, and then we process it. That's excellent, right? That gives us the ability to get the data we need in sort of with the right sort of time SLAs that we want to power our product. Thing two, we wanted to easily connect between Sentry and Calixa. Awesome, they have that as well. So these OAuth flows where we can easily set up the integration from either side, an easy way for an account to grant permissions, right? So you need, for an OAuth, you need to write what scope that application has access to, and you have to grant that to a vendor like us, and then it lets us then set up the URLs on our behalf. We've looked at other platforms where they require, like, oh, have your customer copy and paste things into their console. That's kind of a non-starter because that makes it really hard to build an application. With Sentry, we found it super easy to just with a few clicks get everything set up. And actually, I'll just show you what setting up an application really looks like from our side. So inside Calixa, where you saw it, you basically just click on add an integration, pops up all the integrations that we have, and we say, okay, we want to add a Sentry integration. Awesome. It pops this thing, hey, you need to link your account. Sign into Sentry, link your account. You click that button, and it kicks off the OAuth flow. So we then redirect the user into over to Sentry, where again you can see what permissions our app requires and what's needed for it. And in a few basic clicks, you can accept and install. That's super awesome. So sort of reflecting on all this, like on our experiences, I sort of think of a couple things that was like pretty important to us. One is like these public APIs that Sentry had made it super easy to get going, right? It let me, the semi-technical CEO, former product manager, I could look at them, understand them, the documentation was great, I understand what capabilities we had. So I could say like, yep, let's do it. I think we can do it from my technical PM standpoint. So then I was able to say, put it in our sprint, and our engineer took a look at it and built a prototype in a couple of days. That's awesome, right? So you can really easy to get going. We built one of those internal applications to really, we wanted to prove that the app would do what we thought it would. And then once we said like, yeah, it does it, this is awesome, right? We could then it took about a month to harden it, right? And the hardest part of building an application is that sort of always that last 10% of making sure, all the OAuth works well, and that you've encountered enough different types of errors such that, hey, we have a good sense that this is going to work for, hundreds of customers, not just, tens of customers. And so that there was probably about another month of sort of hardening up to where it's a production quality app. And ever since we've launched it, we've not had any issue. And I would say that's a testament to both sides, the platform being stable on the Sentry side, and then sort of good software engineering on our side as well. So been super happy with that. A couple more things on why I really liked building with Sentry. I said this a few times, but yeah, quick to prototype and build. That's like, as a developer, you want that. You want to sort of prove your idea out and make sure it's possible. Two, I don't think the Sentry team knew I put this in there. It was a late edit. The team has been great, right? So we first were able to prototype it ourselves without talking to anyone, which is critical, which what you need. But two, when we encountered bumps here and there or asked like recommendation, we just wrote in and got great support. And ever since, like I said, it was easy to publish, and like the maintenance has been like, I legitimately have not thought about it, which is kind of like what you want. You want to be able to set it and forget it. So great, Thomas. You have this app, you've published it. What are people saying about it? So here's one of our mutual customers. And this is Troy, who's the CEO and founder of Courier, and Courier is a great API for email, SMS, and push notifications. We also use them as well. But I think, you know, as you can see here, it's really helped his sales and engineering team get on the same page and make it so that his, you know, engineering team wouldn't have to do the work to surface these errors, but could really put them on the same page with sales. And that's critical for them because they also have a developer product as well. So they want to really empower those forward-facing customer, that forward-facing customer team, and really bridge the gap between sales and engineering. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to the Sentry folks to talk to you a little bit about how you publish apps with Sentry.
Thanks, Thomas. So the actual publishing workflow itself is fairly straightforward, and it's exactly like Thomas described. So we start with the submission itself. So you would have access to all the resources, the integration platform, and as of earlier this week, a sample application that tells you how to exercise functionality in the platform. And when you come in for submission, we would require you to share a description of what exactly your integration does, any artwork that would be user-facing, any permissions that your integration would require, and also like something like a test plan. So we'd want to understand like what type of testing you've done so that we could do the same on our side as well. And login credentials in terms of like, you know, how do we log in and how can we exercise the same functionality on our end. The other part that we'd also ask is some support expectations. The intent is that if this is something that is going to other developers on the Sentry platform, if for whatever reason the integration runs into issues, some type of an SLO in terms of response, whether it's like 24 hours or 96 hours or so on. So that is actually codified. So that's the submission aspect. And then there's a review. So this review is done entirely on the Sentry side, and it is a fairly light touch process. It's literally taking a look at the functionality and then saying, is the integration doing what it's supposed to do? Are there any, I mean, how error tolerant is it? So one of our developers would live the life of a user. They would put the integration through its paces. And essentially, we check for functionality and integrity, and we use the credentials that you've supplied. And when there's any feedback, like there is a lively conversation, there's a good back and forth between the publisher and our teams. And in fairly quick order, we say, yes, this is good to go. And then we publish it. And when it's published, it's available to all developers on the Sentry platform. And at that point, the app shows up in the integration actually shows up within the Sentry UI. And it also starts getting featured on our Sentry page, and any associated marketing motion kicks off at that point. So that's about how you could publish an integration with Sentry. And this is what the integrations look like. And this is the integration platform. There are a couple of links there. So we will be sharing both of these with you. And without much ado, we'd like to take some questions. Angela, please let me know if you want me to stay on the slide, or I'll just keep it on.
Yeah, feel free to keep it on. Thank you to all three of our speakers, Thomas, Gautham, and Santhan today for the great discussion. I hope this content was helpful. We'll get through as many questions as we can here. I'm just gonna dive into the first question, and feel free to add your questions as they come up into the chat box. So the first one to Nisanthan. Are integrations built on the integration platform available on Sentry open source?
No, the integration is controlled by the third party and is only available on SaaS.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is to Gautham. How long does it typically take to go through the integration publishing process?
I think that's a great question. I'd say that the answer typically depends. So we've seen integrations go through the actual publishing process, sometimes like as early as like even 3 weeks, and that is the total time in queue. But then that's also a function of how complex the integration is and what came in through the door for submission. So I would say that on our side, the review process itself is literally somebody, like I was saying, I mean, Nisanthan or somebody else in our team would take a look at the integration, exercise functionality, share feedback. And if there's no back and forth, we've seen integrations typically about 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, that's about how long. It could be sooner as well. So there's that. On the other hand, if there is something that is something that's a little more complex in terms of what you're trying to achieve, and there are things that we might need to do to enhance functionality, that obviously might take longer because there is development time involved. But if you were to use the functionality that's available on the platform itself, I would say that it's no longer than like 2 to 3 weeks. I'd say that the reason why it's 2 to 3 weeks is more a function of us assigning somebody and us, our team like finding the time to do the testing on our side. But that's more of a process timeline as opposed to the actual work itself. Not sure if I answered your question. I'm happy to share more context there.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, the next one I believe is to Nisanthan. What language is the sample app built with?
We built examples in Python and Node.js, which is in TypeScript. And the front end of the Kanban app is built with React in TypeScript as well.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, and this one is to Thomas. What was the most surprising thing when building your integration?
I think the most surprising thing is how quickly we could get going without talking to someone. I think a lot of the platforms that we interact with, you put you through hoops and make you sign like weird NDAs and things like that. Whereas with Sentry, we were able to prototype, and so it was a couple of days we had a prototype and it worked, and we could proof of concept. And then I'd say it took us about a month to have a sort of what I'd call a production hardened app. Why was that the case? Well, we're taking webhooks and taking sort of a fire hose of errors that come in. And so if there were any quirks in that payload that we hadn't assumed when we were processing it, we had to fix that. So those are more issues on our side, sort of making sure that we were processing the payload appropriately and mapping things on our side. But there's nothing inherently wrong with the data coming from Sentry. It was more about how does our application handle the myriad different things that could be in a payload from an error standpoint.
Awesome. Thank you for your answer. That pretty much is all we have today. If you have any more questions that you think of later, you can always email webinars@sentry.io or reply directly to the post-event email, and we will try to get those answered for you. And again, you'll all be receiving the recording in the next 1 to 2 days through email. And don't forget to complete the quick survey after this. We'd really appreciate it. And that pretty much concludes our webinar today. I want to thank Thomas again for sharing your awesome integration story with us. If your company is in the market for a product-led sales tool, definitely make sure to check out Calixa. And huge thanks goes out to Gautham and Nisanthan for sharing your expertise about the ways developers can build on Sentry today. And thank you to everyone who joined us and to folks who are watching this recording. I hope this workshop was helpful to you and hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thank you all.